Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce that the Senate has concurred in and adopted the report of the Conference Committee on Senate File Number 2677, an act relating to unemployment insurance. The Senate has repassed said bill in accordance with the recommendation report of the Conference Committee. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Winkler moves that Joint Rule 2.06 relating to conference committees be suspended as it relates to Senate File Number 2677.
Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, members, we have a 12-hour rule for taking up conference reports. This motion is to suspend the rules and waive that restriction. I understand that this is a bipartisan motion. But I'm not sure which bipartisan member is going to talk to it.
The member from Stearns, Representative Dameth.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I would recommend a green vote.
All those in favor of the Winkler motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails.
Conference can report on Senate File Number 2677, an act relating to unemployment insurance. The report is addressed to the Honorable David J. Osmick, President of the Senate, the Honorable Melissa Hortman, Speaker of the House of Representatives. We, the undersigned conferees for Senate File Number 2677, report that we've agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The report is signed by 5 of the 5 senators and 3 of the 5 House members on the Conference Committee. Pawlowski moves that the report of the Conference Committee on Senate File Number 2677 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
I recognize the member from Winona who will explain the Conference Committee report.
Madam Speaker, I move that we adopt the Conference Committee report, or would you like me to go directly to the explanation?
As you wish, sir.
Why don't we adopt the Conference Committee report, and then I'll go to the explanation.
All those in favor of the Pawlowski motion to adopt the Conference Committee report, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The report is adopted. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by conference.
Third reading, Senate File Number 2677, as amended by conference.
Third reading as amended by conference. Representative Pawlowski to the bill.
Madam Speaker, 3 days ago you charged 5 members of the House to form a conference committee with the Senate and return to the House with the provisions that had been passed from the House. I am pleased to report to you today that we have been successful. We have returned with a conference committee report that is primarily the provisions that were passed by this body. We have $2.7 billion, the fully funded unemployment insurance account. We have $500 million for the frontline workers. This is $250 million more than was discussed last year and in January before session. We have $190 million for the governor for ongoing COVID response. And in the discussions of the bill and in the conference committee, we have very strict guidelines on how the governor can spend that money and that the House and Senate have the ability to override it. Madam Speaker, I do have to thank you for your negotiating skills, particularly with a former student of mine in the Senate, and then with the governor. You spent about most of the last 2 days negotiating with both of them, and we would not be here today unless you had won out in those negotiations. Madam Speaker, we're at a point in this session where this is going to be the first significant conference committee passed by the body. Passing this, I think, will clear the way for other conference committee reports to come before us. This is essential. We need to replenish that account. We don't need to have a tax on businesses, particularly after a pandemic. We also have the, I think, obligation to make sure that we take care of the people who were on the front lines during the pandemic and supporting ourselves and our families and risking their own lives when we had a 100-year pandemic before us. Madam Speaker, this is a unique conference committee report. I would suggest we might not see another one like it for another 100 years. We have other individuals who are going to speak today. I want to make sure that if you would recognize Chairman Knorr next. It was his committee that also worked on this, and he was an integral part last night. And then we have 3 other members from the conference committee who I think should be up before we have a general discussion. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me begin by saying thank you, Madam Speaker, for your leadership, for your foresight and fortitude and your focus. We're here today because of the work that you have paved the way to support businesses and to support workers. Madam Speaker, on behalf of my colleagues, I want to say thank you. I also want to thank the Senate conferees, Chair Pratt, Rarick, Kiffmeyer, Kent, and Putnam. I also wanted to thank my colleagues in the House, Chair Pawlowski, Fraser, Emma, myself, and Representative Baker. We were tasked to do one thing: to do the right thing for the workers and to do the right thing for the employers. Members, unemployment insurance benefits are part of safety net in Minnesota and are intended to help eligible workers pay their rent and utilities, food and nutrition, childcare and healthcare, and monthly needs. It provides economic security for individuals and families. This is meant to support employers or workers who are laid off on no fault of their own. It's also meant to stabilize the economy, especially when we had the pandemic. So at the beginning of the pandemic, the balance on the UI Trust Fund was about $1.6 billion. We had a healthy balance at that time. As I've explained previously, when the economy is expanding, the balance is high. When we deal with the pandemic or recession, when the economy is contracting, the balance goes low. So the system for the UI is set to go up and down what we call self-correcting system. And there's mechanism within the law so that the balance can be adjusted. Members, as you recall, at the beginning of last year, we passed Senate File 192. We provided direct relief to the employers so they don't see an increase on their UI payments or tax rates. The first thing we did was to remove any increase on their experience rating, which will have been more than double, triple for many employers. At the same time, we held the taxable wage to $35,000. That meant a significant saving at the upfront, but also it led to an increase on the negative balance that we have today. As of today, we have a little bit over $1.4 billion debt. And we have almost $13 million interest that is accruing at $60,000 a day, almost $60,000 a day. Members, as we look through this process, we wanted to make sure that we replenish the UI Trust Fund. So what we did, we took the amount from the state fiscal federal recovery funds, and we also added $400 million from the general fund. The reason being that paying the $1.4 billion and the requirement for the UI Trust Fund balance to be more than or equal to 0.75% of the total covered wages. This is about $1.3 billion. This will ensure that the base tax rate remains at the lowest level at 0.1%. Members, also, this will ensure that there is no any additional assessment. It will ensure that there is no any special assessment going forward, not only for this fiscal year, but also for next year as employers are paying their trust fund. While we're looking at that, we also avoided the future tax credit reduction, which will have automatically kicked in next year. This is a big win not only for the employers, but also for the workers. This bill, Madam Speaker and members, is to set us on the right path, to make sure that we value not only the employers, but also the workers. The small amount that we're providing for the frontline workers is something that is a starting point. I want to assure you that this is not the end, especially for the UI, for the hourly school workers, which is no longer in this bill. We will continue to have that conversation, and I look forward for your support because we have had from them for a long time. We can't leave anyone behind, as we have done in many times. So this is a moment for us when we come back, and a promise from the Senate to look into that legislation so that we can once and for all take care of the hourly school workers. But we also want to make sure that if we have a pandemic ongoing while we're in the endemic stage, that we do not have to come back to a special session and allocated the $190 million for the administration so that they can address and manage COVID-19 pandemic. So, Madam Speaker, this is a good day. It's a big win for the workers. It's a big win for the businesses. And I urge everyone in this chamber to vote green. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just want to echo what my colleague said about this team, about where the House has been and where the House leadership has been since we started session. And frankly, this bill is now over a year of getting here. Last year, when we came out of session, we made a commitment to frontline workers that we would ensure that we recognized what they did to protect the health and the safety and keep our state going. We made a commitment that we would distribute that $250 million, and it is now over a year late. And what I am glad we're doing in this bill is we are coming back and we are honoring that commitment. When this bill went to conference, it reflected our position. It reflected the majority position that we will not pick and choose, that in Minnesota, especially with a $10 billion surplus, we can take care of workers and we can take care of businesses, and we can do both. Just to remind you, and it wasn't that long ago, but it feels like forever ago, on Monday, we passed a bill that had, for the folks who said that the urgent priority was refilling the UI trust fund, it had $2.7 billion, the full request. For the folks who have over a year, and particularly those frontline workers who've been in our capital and the folks who've been fighting, it had $1 billion so that all of those 660,000 Minnesotans would get a $1,500 check. That's now a year late. And it took care of those hourly school workers who have been waiting for 80 years to have access to the unemployment insurance program that has provided the security for most of our workers, and particularly in the last 2 years, a lifeline. That was our position, and that's what we went in to fight for. And the Senate majority's refusal to take care of those workers is how we ended up with this bill. It's lopsided. Just look at the numbers. It's $2.7 billion for our businesses, and particularly focused on our biggest businesses. Millions of dollars to Target, to Amazon, to Walmart, probably not enough to our small businesses. $500 million for frontline workers. That's a 5-to-1 ratio. And what I think is most important is looking at how it reflects our lopsided economy. The priorities of our biggest businesses are fully taken care of. That's who we're taking care of. But who are we leaving behind? In this bill, we entirely leave behind those hourly school workers. Those folks who are driving your kids, who are taking care of and making sure that all Minnesota kids have nutritious lunches, the folks who are providing one-to-one care to students with disabilities, those workers who are the lowest paid workers in many cases in our schools and still don't have access to this system. It's just not right, and it's really unfair. But it is really important that those workers, those frontline workers, get what we have promised them. And also, session is not over. And so I hope, and what I hope coming out of conference, is that we vote for this bill today, but we remember who we took care of and who we are leaving behind. Because I hope when session is over, those 62,000 workers are in our package, and we finally end that unfairness. I hope you'll join me, and I know that it'll take the Senate, it'll take the governor, and it'll take our caucus continuing to fight the way we have fought for this. So, members, I'm going to vote for this bill today, but I know we have unfinished business in this bill and in this chamber, and I look forward to doing that work.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Pawlowski, thank you for your work on this bill. Chair Noor, thank you for your work on this soon-to-be bill that we're going to pass out of here. And Representative Greenman, thank you for your fight for those school workers that are not included in this. Much of what has been said is what I would repeat here, but I'm not going to repeat it. This bill is uneven, and Representative Greenman spoke to the folks that have been left out. We know that UI can be a lifeline for families. And there are thousands of Minnesotans that are not able to access UI like every other worker in this state. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because I think as legislators, we should always have the mind frame that we're not going to leave anybody behind, that we're not going to exclude anyone. And currently we have done that. But Representative Greenman was right. This session is not over yet. We still have time to make sure that we make those workers eligible to access UI, to have access to something that could be sustaining for them and their families. The $750 average check that workers are likely to get from the $500 million we have, that's real money. And it's real money because I grew up in a family of essential workers, many low-wage workers. $750 would be a big deal. Sometimes it'd be larger than a take-home check. It could buy gifts, groceries, have a birthday party that a kid may not be used to, pay a doctor bill. It's a big deal. It's going to be impactful. So I'm happy about that. I'm not happy about the unevenness of this bill. I'm not happy about who's left out of this bill, but I am happy that we're going to be able to deliver for workers, even though it's taken us some time to do it. We're going to be one of the leaders in the country. We're going to be one of the states that's leading on giving our essential workers pay in this country. We could have been one of the top leaders on this if we'd have taken care of this a year ago. With that said, I will be voting yes for this, and I urge the members in my caucus to vote yes as well. And I'm glad we've done this for workers. Thank you.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the opportunity to just ask Representative Noor a question if he would yield.
He will yield. Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Noor, and all the colleagues who worked on this. I'm really pleased to see it get to this point, but I do have a question. I was under the impression that, as you've stated, that these additional assessments will not be assessed on businesses. But this morning when I was driving in, I heard Commissioner Grove on the radio state that he advises businesses to pay what they were assessed now and expect that they will be made whole. So my businesses, some of them already paid the tax and they know to expect a refund, but some of them have been wondering if we're going to get this done by tomorrow and would they still need to pay that. So I'm just looking for clarification on the record. I did reach out to DEED and I have not had a response from them since I emailed them this morning. So if businesses have been waiting for us to get this done and they are now knowing this is coming, do they still need to pay those additional assessments that they received and then wait for the refund, or can they not pay that and go with what it would be without the special assessments and wait for maybe DEED will recalculate it? The bill language, which I've read, is just not clear on this point. It says the department will either credit or refund each employer, but it doesn't really give guidance how to handle it if you haven't paid yet. Thank you.
Representative Noor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Robbins, I think if you look at subdivision 5, that's much clearer for the employers by waiving penalties and interest if they haven't paid. So that section clearly is a guidance for those who may not have paid on time. And for those who have already paid because the the payment were required prior to that. So I just wanted to confirm that's the question that you're asking, because we have included the language for credit, refund, and also waiver of any penalties and interest. So any employer who is going to see this bill passed, hopefully we can pass the bill first. This is not the law yet, and then once the governor has signed, it becomes the law and the employers can take advantage of that. Since I already have the mic, I forgot to thank all the staff members who really worked on this issue because they were working day and night to take care of this bill. So thank you.
Representative Robbins.
Thank you for that clarification, Representative Noor. And just to clarify then, if people don't receive a recalculation from DEED of their assessment, they still need to pay the original assessment by May 31st and penalties will be waived.
If he will yield, he will yield. Representative Noor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That's right. I think the fees and penalties that we have already waived under subdivision 5, and that applies for anyone who has not paid. But if they pay, they get a credit, meaning that it's going to be applied for the next quarter, or they may get a refund if they've paid beyond the required amount, because someone may have reached the maximum required of the $38,000 taxable wage in the first quarter, meaning that they'll pay the entire amount based on the rate increases. So that individual will be able to receive a refund, and based on my conversation, I think it may take 2 to 3 months for the department to do the recalculations and do that work. So let's make it easy for them. Let's send this bill to the governor's desk today, and we can take care of all businesses.
Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate that clarification, and I do hope DEED will put out a statement that makes this crystal clear for business owners, because I know some people are sitting on tens of thousands of dollars that they weren't sure they would still have to pay by tomorrow, and now it looks like they will have to pay it by May 31st. Granting that the penalties will be waived, but it's still a cash flow issue, and I'm just looking to DEED to please clarify this very soon. Thank you.
The member from Goodhue, Representative Haley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. I also, as a leader of this caucus, want to thank Chair Noor. I serve on the Jobs Committee with you. Thanks for your work on this. Thank you, Representative Greenman. Thank you, Representative Frazier. Thank you to the people on our team that work on conferees, Representative Baker, and the folks on our Job Committee and our lead, Representative Hamilton. And to our leadership on both sides of the aisle, Leader Stoughton, New Brindley, and Leader Hortman. And to the governor and our Senate colleagues. This is tough work, but we landed the plane. When we came into this, we left last session, we made a promise to healthcare workers and long-term care workers and any of those folks that stood up in the early days of the pandemic without appropriate PPE and stood up to help Minnesotans who were ill from COVID-19. And we came into this session also with a promise to businesses that we would hold them harmless when they were forced to shut down and keep their employees at home. And fundamentally, it's been those two promises from government to our constituencies that we have been trying to work out these past 5 months. This is what Minnesotans expect of us. And I'm proud to stand up in this chamber and say that we got it done. This is problem solving. This is working across our political differences. This is doing the right thing, and this is leadership. So thank you to all my colleagues for doing the tough work. We landed the plane today. This is a good bill for all of the job creators across Minnesota and for all of their employees, all of those families who are hardworking and show up every day. We are a phenomenal state of people and job creators and families, and I believe this is a good bill for all of them. Please vote green.
The member from Candy Ojai, Representative Baker.
Thank you, members. Again, as I was honored to sit on the conference committee as well, thank you, Speaker, for placing me on that with your trust, and Leader Dowd for having me kind of step in. As a small business owner, this is a good day for our huge concern about the unemployment insurance premiums that we pay every quarter to make sure that our employees have that fund when the economy could possibly take a turn like we saw in March of 2020. Today, we're fulfilling a promise that we made to those folks. We're not holding them we're holding them harmless for something that was completely out of their control, and I'm really, really proud that today we finally have a bill that we can all get behind and support to refill to that level the unemployment insurance trust fund needed to be at to make sure we could hit the restart button and now let our natural work and the natural economy work its way through. When they go up, it goes up the right way, and it comes down when the economy is expanding or contracting, as it has done. It has been a great program for many, many years. Again, the frontline worker pay, it's double what it was. It is long overdue. Our employees needed this. The list of industries here are expansive and well covered. I think our DFL colleagues did a good job trying to find out what are those industries. The biggest problem I think we're going to have is, did we get that right? That is going to be tricky. And we asked a lot of questions last night when we were working through the details, is who is going to be clearing this up when it comes to what about me and what about this industry? And I want to make sure that we hold our agencies accountable. The Department of Labor and Department of Economic Development had assured us last night it is a huge project ahead of them. And I am cautiously optimistic that they can do this. But we need to make sure that we communicate in our own communities about how people need to, when the program is stood up, apply for this program to make sure that the vetting system can make sure that everybody that is deserving of this is not missed. And again, the third part of the bill that nobody really has talked about here is the LCRC changes that were made to keep $190 million in the fund for ongoing COVID issues that still may crop up. We still have testing issues, PPE things that come up. We have to keep our eye on this, and so we've left money here. And again, the agreement with leadership to make sure that one of our bodies could say, stop for a minute, we don't like this. This was a very important part of this bill that gave us the ability to put that control or our body's strength like it is today on every other bill that we do. When one of the bodies don't want to move forward on something, it doesn't happen. And that's important about this bill. I think that was a very important part of this negotiating process that worked out really, really well. So again, it was mentioned earlier, businesses, I hope that you get 36 different ways that the state of Minnesota will communicate to you to make sure you communicate to your employees if you fall under that industry zone for this bill, so that our employees get an easy way to make sure that they have an application form and put in front of them. They can apply for this. We want it to be an easy process. We hope and we trust our agencies are going to do this because we are spending $11 million for a vendor to make sure this happens. So whether it's going to be a debit card, a check refund, an automatic deposit into your checking account, they're still working those details out. But it's our responsibility as policymakers to take this information back to our communities to make sure our employers know what they need to do. And for the folks that are not working, some are not working today because they couldn't work in a location because of changes in policy. Everybody that worked in this industry during that period of time, March of 2020 through the end of June 2021, and they fall within those parameters, should apply for this if those industries are there, whether they're working for somebody or not. So I want to make sure that we cover as many people as we possibly can. But the bottom line today, members, is we got to a really important moment in this session. We can all take a deep breath. The several weeks leading up to today was getting more edgier and a little bit more heightened about the frustration that both of us were feeling. And again, I thank the leaders to help us get the overarching big numbers figured out, and we could work on the details into the late evening hours last night. But we got it today because today was a really important day that we promised we would get this done. It's not a perfect bill, and we've got to make sure that we do not let perfect get in the way of a really good thing. So this is a win for Minnesota. It's how we can get things across the finish line. Thank you for being a bipartisan body today. I sure hope we can get a lot of green votes on the board today, members. Let's take this win home, and then let's come back next week, and let's get the rest of our work done that we have to get done. So thank you so much for, again, hearing this out, and hope for a green vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Any further discussion? The member from Wabasha, Representative Drzkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. I heard what Representative Baker said about not letting the imperfect get in the way of the not being imperfect getting in the way of a good thing, or however you said that. I understand that, Representative Baker. It's a big deal. It's a very big deal. I'm reading Article 3 of the bill, and I just have some more questions about it. I wonder, Representative Pawlowski, if you would be willing to help us better understand the way that Article 3 functions. I was reading the article, I've read it over, I've read Session Law Chapters 71 and 81 and tried to understand exactly how those interface with the new language that's in the bill under Article 3. There's language in there that says a commission may approve or disapprove proposed expenditures without a public meeting. And I'm wondering, and it says, of course, somebody can send in their vote, if you will, is what it appears to me to be and to say. I struggle with the fact, members, that we even have done this in the past, and I would like to see us not do this in the future, and we're doing it here in this bill with $190 million of the people's money, $190 million. And that is the pause, Representative Baker, that it gives me, and your words are on target. I understand that. But as we're here, I need to ask these questions. So, Madam Speaker, if Representative Pawlowski would yield.
He will yield. Representative Pawlowski.
Madam Speaker, Representative Drzkowski, this section of the bill was discussed at some length last night, and if I can't answer your question appropriately, I'm going to defer to Chairman Knorr. The language that's in the bill is language that has been used primarily before, and I think it reestablishes a balance between the executive branch and the legislative branch on how this money can be spent. Over the course of the pandemic, we have had the executive branch primarily in charge of most of the spending of the money that has gone through the federal government and through the legislature. This procedure that's outlined here would be, for the first time, we would have the House and the Senate, one or the other, that could negate that. Beyond that detail, I will defer to Chairman Knorr, because I believe the language was discussed at length in his committee.
Representative Drzkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wonder if Chairman Knorr would be willing to share what he knows about that. Chair Knorr, one of the additional questions I didn't ask as I prefaced Representative Pawlowski yielding was in Chapter 71 Session Law, or 81, I don't remember which, it did mention that after a certain date, the balance goes back to the general fund. I don't see that in this language in the bill, so I'm wondering what is operative in terms of that. If between the governor's desire to spend this $190 million and this commission's approval of that, if there is money left over, what is the disposition of that, and what would the date be of that?
Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think if you look at Section 1, this funding is available from May 23, 2022 until February 15, 2023. So that aligns when we are in session, so that the funding that we're authorizing here will go back. This is only one-time appropriation, and if you look at line 13, page 9, it's available until March 31, 2023. Anything that is not spent beyond that, as the way that I understand this section, the money will revert back to the general funds. And quite frankly, the section that puts the guardrails is 3 members from the Senate can decide the expenditure is not authorized, or 3 members from the House have got the veto power to say any expenditure that is recommended by the administration can be stopped based on any conversation. And that's how this structure was negotiated by leadership, to make sure that there's accountability and there's also transparency.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Chair Knorr. And Representative Knorr, they did have that language. It was in the bill in 2020. If you look back at the session law language, it said specifically if the money isn't spent by this date, it goes to the general fund. Now, I don't see that in the bill. And so I don't know that that's clear at this point. I think it's likely a product of moving too fast, overrunning our headlights again, members. And I think that's what we have going on here. Members, Madam Speaker, I also struggle, I mean, let's be honest, what this appears to me to be is, this is the governor's piece of the people's money to spend in this bill. One article belongs largely to the Senate. One article largely belongs to the House, and this is a product of compromise. I understand that. I don't like it, Madam Speaker, but it is. And Representative Baker, I understand that. But we have $190 million in this bill that's dedicated towards COVID-19 costs that are incurred between May 31st of this year, which hasn't even gotten here yet, and February 15th of next year, which is even further away from having gotten here yet. And I think, as a matter of fact, last time I checked, the peacetime emergency was over. And as I read this language, I didn't get a chance to talk to staff about this, and thank you for your help trying to understand it, Representative Knorr, but they do mention the peacetime emergency, or we did in 2020 in Chapter 71 and 81. We talked then about, in the grounding for this was the peacetime emergency. And so we have session law here that's going to be written, that's going to be referencing what passed then, and it talks about a standing peacetime emergency at that point. We don't have that now. And members, I don't know what that means. I don't know if we're referring to something that is no longer in effect, it appears. And what does that mean for the process and decision-making of this super committee of the Minnesota House and Senate? I don't know what the best term is, but it's, it's 10 members of the House and Senate or something like that. Trying to remember, yeah, it's 5 in each house. These are super legislators that we are giving this veto power to. to do or to not to do after the governor says that he wants to spend $2.5 million, and we actually say in the language, it's okay if you don't have a vote. You can send something in via mail if you want. You can mail it in if something is over $2.5 million. Those are my struggles with the bill, but Representative Baker, I'm with you on what you said. I understand. But it's $190 million. Think about this, members. I think we went too fast on this one. I think we're going to have regrets. I may end up voting for the bill. But I think we went too fast. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Dakota, Representative Koznick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I rise with a little bit of appreciation for the work that's been done here. Representative Pawlowski has been, along with others, but him in particular, I'd like to point out, has been consistent in saying that we needed to replenish the unemployment trust fund for our Minnesota families. And about 5 months ago, before session started, there was kind of broad agreement that that was a priority of this legislature. And unfortunately, now, kind of at the 11th and a half hour, we finally are here. But there's a variety of other spending that's included and tagged onto this, and I think that should concern us. I know many of you that I've talked to have shared that concern. And we should support replenishing the UI account for the employers that contributed to that fund for their workers. But as we look at an uncertain economy, rising inflation, and even hints of an oncoming recession, we do need to have a secure unemployment trust account ready and available for Minnesota families that might need that. That trust account was drained through no fault of the employers that had to shut down their businesses and unfortunately lay people off. So it's a good thing that we had those benefits there, but it wasn't the workers or the employer's fault. So I'm glad we're doing that today. Replenishing the fund with federal dollars even makes sense, so I appreciate that. Using some general funds is unfortunate but necessary to get that trust fund back to where it was pre-pandemic. And so by passing this today, and I think it will pass, I'm glad that we're avoiding the long-term additional taxes on our job creators, allowing businesses to reinvest in their employees and their businesses, even in this uncertain economy that we're heading to. But friends, I'm concerned that adding $500 million in payments, what that will do to further add to inflationary pressure, how that will add to our economy and add more problems into our supply concerns. And we certainly are grateful and thankful for those that had to work differently and harder in the last couple years as laid out in this bill. But as I have talked to neighbors, friends, and every single family had to work harder and differently and under more stress, and we were all impacted. We are all in this together. At the beginning of the pandemic, that was kind of the rally call. We're all in this together. We're not sure what we're going to face, but we're going to stand together and figure our way through it. And it sounded good. But without rehashing the well-known policy controversies of shutdowns, mandates, fines, lockdowns, curfews, this bill is offering preferred sectors bonus pay, but not all. This is not, we're all in this together. I listened to the conference committee last night, and the logistics of $500 million in bonus pay needs more work. We can have differences on the policy and the amount, of course, but the logistics need to be sound and better. There's concerns with creating a new software system or purchasing a software system to administer these payouts, whether they're going to be sent out on a bank transfer, sent out on a check, or maybe even getting a little debit card. And who's to know if you're actually qualify for the bonus pay? And who's going to notify people? Those details are a little fuzzy right now, and it wasn't just because it was late at night. I think if you look at the bill and ask some honest questions, I'm not sure DEED has all the details figured out yet, and they should. And while there is an urgency to repay the trust fund for the unemployment benefits, this part needs more work, the bonus pay, and we don't have to do those together. I have been here in a short little 8 years, so I'm not naive on how things operate. And Madam Speaker, you're looking at me. I appreciate the efforts and your policy positions holding and getting this to where it is. But we don't need to do this together combined when it's not quite ready. And so I think a better and a preferred method of bonus pay, if you will, would be permanent tax reform. And I have not seen that yet this session. And I'm not optimistic that we will see that this session. And so members, I have a variety concerned with the overall proposal, but I am grateful that the unemployment trust fund will be paid. I think this bill will pass, but it will pass without my support today.
The member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Koznick, I probably dovetail a lot on what you said. There's positives and negatives to this, obviously. But I'm wondering if Representative Knorr, Chair Knorr, would yield to a couple of questions, please.
He will yield. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Knorr, did the governor specify what sorts of things, specific things he might want to or need to spend the $190 million on?
Representative Knorr.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think, Representative Scott, if you look through the way that the LCRC was set up, which is the Legislative COVID Response Commission, there were specific parameters that were set up, and I think if you look back in how some of the funding was spent, were particularly based on the need that was rising up. For example, when there was a need in the nursing homes, the governor was able to spend some of the funding through the LCRC. And quite frankly, the way that this bill is set up, it's supposed to address COVID-19 management costs that will occur between the end of session until February 15, 2023. So that's much clearer. And with the two bodies, which is the Senate and the House, being involved in that process helps guide the governor and the administration in how to spend that funding.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Knorr, for that answer. I do have also some questions and some concerns about one of the things that Representative Koznick alluded to, and just how we're going to verify and qualify people for the frontline worker pay. And one of my biggest areas of consternation and question is, how will you verify the 120 hours of employment and whether or not a worker had the option of working from home or not? Now, for nurses and people in healthcare that have to have that direct patient contact, that's going to be easy to answer. But for others, it may not be as easy. And so are you pointing to someone else, Representative Knorr, of who'd ask that? Madam Speaker?
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I guess that question goes to Representative Frazier, if he would yield.
He will yield. Representative Frazier.
Representative Scott, we did have this discussion last night during the conference committee, and Department of Labor and Industry that will be working to verify these individuals that apply. They are working on a process to do that, to guardrails around fraud, but also definitely to make sure that the individuals that apply for these are actually eligible. They talked about their processes last night and how they do that, and I trust in our agencies to make sure that they prevent any type of fraud and make sure that folks are actually verified and eligible for the resources that they're going to receive.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Frazier. When the bill came through, your standalone bill, Representative Frazier, came through to the floor, I had some concerns, and one was that, I think I actually had amendments for these two things, but one was that the name and the amount that the person received would be public, and that there would be sunlight on this, so that it's easier to prevent fraud or harder to prevent fraud when something like that is there. And also, I had an amendment that the Office of the Legislative Auditor would be doing an audit next February or March, and they said at that time that they would have the time to do it, but not until then. So, so I'm just wondering, Representative Frazier, what your thoughts are, particularly on an OLA audit of this program, post-program. Thank you.
Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Scott, we do have the language encouraging the OLA to do an audit on this, on the program, so that is in there. We did honor that. I said we would take care of that. We do have that language in there. In regards to this, you do the happy dance. I like that. In regards to the sunshine piece, again, I talked about, I thought it was important to make sure we have transparency. We do have the reports that have to be given to the legislator and provided within 90 days after the program has paid out the resources. So that is in there as well for the transparency pieces. And again, I'll go back to what the Department of Labor and Industry spoke to last night when they spoke to what their processes that they're putting in place to ensure that there's no fraud and transparency. And also there is language that allows for the Department of Labor and Industry or the Department of Revenue to go back and claw back money if they find that there has been anyone that's been given the money that is actually ineligible for those resources. So we tried as best we could to make sure that we were answering and addressing the things you and I were able to talk about a couple of times. So, yeah.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Frazier, for that. I appreciate that. And, well, members, those are my concerns. It's not a perfect bill, that's for darn sure, but I appreciate everyone being in, that was involved in making this come together. I appreciate everyone's efforts and the conference committee staying up till midnight and so forth to get the deal done. And I hope and pray everything runs smoothly on both ends of this deal. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Washington, Representative Frankie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I look at this bill and this compromise as us living up to our word to small businesses and our word to those who kept us safe and healthy, the ones who helped keep our businesses propped up. I just want to say that there are concerns with this bill, but I'm just happy that it's moving forward. And on the behalf of small businesses and the people who kept them going, thank you. Thank you to the leadership. Thank you to everybody who came together to do this compromise and take care of what we need to take care of. So got to get back to work here and listen to you guys. Let's get this moving forward, get it to the governor, and let's get this taken care of. Vote green. Thank you.
The other member from Washington, Representative Jurgens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And actually, that's one of the things I was going to talk about. I'm glad that Representative Frankie chimed in, and especially doing it over video. We hear a lot about this, how it's benefiting the large businesses, but what we don't hear enough about is businesses like Keith Frankie's. He's not sitting in that chair today because he has his laptop set up next to his fryer and his griddle at the Park Cafe so that he can keep his business running and still participate in this process. Those are the types of businesses that we need to benefit, or we need to take care of. Representative Haley said that we're landing the plane, and we are. But that plane has been circling the state of Minnesota for 74 days, burning $50,000 worth of fuel every day. $50K a day is the interest we've been paying because we didn't address this UI trust fund problem earlier. There's no reason why we had to delay this. This should have been done in February. Better late than never, maybe, but there's no reason that the businesses were held hostage again this session by this body, wondering what are we going to do to help them or hurt them or not knowing what their cash flow situation is going to be like because their issue gets tied up in political games. That's not fair to them. So better late than never, but it shouldn't have been this long. And I do have a follow-up question if Representative Frazier would yield for a question on the frontline worker pay.
He will yield. Representative Jurgens.
Just a little clarification from Representative Scott's question. I heard from a constituent of mine who may or may not be my daughter, but regarding the 120 hours that a worker must work and the eligibility regarding whether or not they have the ability to telework or not. A lot of businesses required their employees to come in maybe a day or two a week, and they were alternating workers so that they would be safer. So some days were in the office working with the customer, some days they were able to telecommute. Is it your understanding that if they worked a total of 120 hours in person, that they would then be eligible for the frontline worker pay?
Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Representative, for that question. The answer to that question is yes. If they can testify to or attest to or show that they worked 120 hours within the time frame of the eligibility requirements, they would then also qualify for the resources. It has to be 120 hours working in person outside your home in close proximity with someone other than your family members. Yes.
Representative Jurgens.
Okay, so even though that they had the ability to telecommute some days, the 120 hours total within that time frame would qualify them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any further discussion to the bill? Representative Plowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My final comments will continue in the vein of a thank you. I want to thank particularly Senator Pratt. Senator Pratt had invited me to be the co-author of the bill in February at a press conference, and since I tend to only hold a press conference once every decade, I violated that this session, but I think it was for a good cause. I also want to thank Representative Dowd, Representative Haley, who were also at the press conference. That started us on this path, and granted, it did take some time, but we finally did get here. And then to you, Madam Speaker, you negotiated with Senator Miller, who's from Winona. You put Representative Pawlowski in charge of the conference committee. He's from Winona. So it was two Winona people against you and Governor Walz. And I think we all did a very good job. I hope everyone votes for the bill.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Members, please vote.
Okay.
Will the clerk please call the names of the members who've not yet voted?
Ackland.
Ackland, yes.
Ackland, aye. Davids.
Davids, aye.
Davids, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Houseman.
Houseman, aye.
Houseman, aye. Hertos. Hertos. Keel.
Keel, aye.
Keel, aye. Katiza Watun.
Katiza Batun, aye.
Katiza Watun, aye. Mason.
Mason, aye.
Mason, aye. Mortensen.
Mortensen, no.
Mortensen, no. Murphy. Murphy. Nelson N.
Nelson, and aye.
Nelson N. I. Poston.
Poston, yes.
Poston, I. Sandsted.
Hampstead, yes.
Sandsted, I. Stevenson.
Stevenson, aye.
Stevenson, I. Thompson.
Thompson, aye.
Thompson, I. Zhang Ti. Zhang Ti. Hertos. Excused. Murphy. Murphy. Zhang Ti.
Zhang Ti, aye.
Zhang Ti, aye. Murphy. Murphy votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 124 ayes and 5 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by conference and its title agreed to.